We never set out to kind of be acquired. If that's your plan, well, you don't really care about your customer. Make friends with all your competitors. You want friends in this journey, you don't want enemies. You can get all my ideas. The execution is the secret, it's not the idea. One of our clients that we were pitching to actually started crying, just going, I can't believe I found you guys. This is going to save my entire company.
What's still left to fix when it comes to moving money?
Yeah, I love that question.
What was the benefit for OFX? Where do you see the partnership?
No matter which way I answer this one, people are going to have a disagreement, right?
What's happening here?
There's a lot of spiders and snakes in Asia Pacific in finance, a lot of entrants from other countries got massively burnt. And the reason is,
Hi and welcome to another episode of Money Travels presented by Visa, where we dive in and explore the extraordinary innovations in digital finance, transforming lives and livelihoods everywhere. I'm Rich.
I'm Max.
And today we're coming to you from Melbourne, Australia, and we're delighted to be joined in person by Jaco Veldsman. Jaco, welcome to the show.
thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Instead of us giving like a long intro, why don't you give us your version of the intro? Who you are, where you're coming from?
Fantastic. So born in Cape Town, have been in Australia since 2008. Spent most of my life working around the world in the UK, South Africa and Australia. Banking at first, and then high frequency trading and algorithmic trading. And then very recently started a Fintech. My background is mostly in finance, but I also do a little bit of programming on the side. And obviously now that AI is the next thing, I'm definitely getting my hands dirty in that stuff. So
And your hobby.
yeah.
You've been on both sides of the kind of the banking and the fintech fence, as it were. But the business that you set up, Paytron, then acquired almost 2 years ago by OFX. Let's start with what Paytron did, and then why it was a good exit for Paytron themselves, but also why it was a good acquisition for OFX.
There's a lot to unpack there.
There's about 10 questions in that, right? So,
When we started Paytron, it was actually in March 2020. So it's exactly 5 years ago. And we just heard about COVID, it just started to get going, and it just got really, really hectic in that week. I remember that I met my co-founder in a coffee shop. I'd wanted to start a business and had a couple of ideas, and I was pitching it to him, and the two of us were kind of talking about, is this possible? And both of us had been from the kind of trading backgrounds in banking. And what was fascinating for us at the time is that we were quite surprised how, if I can say, how badly services that you get in big banks have not really filtered into the end user's hands. What I mean by that is you get extraordinarily good tools when you work in banking, especially on the trading floor, because you have to be accurate, you have to be fast, you have to know what you're talking about. And the only people that really managed to build really good systems were algorithmic and high frequency trading and hedge funds. And these people were using technology that we were thinking, is there something of that we can bring back to the end clients and actually bring to the market? A week later, we got an opportunity to work in a smaller business. One of the first problems that we wanted to kind of try and solve was this company was moving a lot of payments around the world. They were moving it in particularly on behalf of their customers. We recognized that if we can help them bring software in and actually take that software and start automating some of these payments, that will make their life easier, and therefore their clients will have a lot better experience. We actually started to look at how do we connect these systems together? And we looked around the market and realized, okay, there's a business opportunity and we're going to start a business and this is what we want to do.
like all good businesses are made in a coffee shop. And you started to try all these thoughts. It started with a thought and an idea. But yeah, what are the specific problems that you were solving for these customers? What was kind of on the shelf for them there? And then how did that change when you guys kind of brought your idea to life?
The end thought that we had was, if we can bring some really professional tools to SMBs in particular, that would be quite helpful to them. And we did not want to compete with big banks. We didn't want to compete with any of the other people that were very successful in the market at the time. There were a lot of tools to move your money around the world, but there weren't tools to automate those processes. And what I call specifically is accounts payable automation, spend management, expense management tools. At the time, we were just focused on AP accounts payable in particular, and they were using their bank. They were uploading it and doing all these payments on behalf of their clients one by one. They were doing it by hand. They were uploading it, and we were quite surprised by that. But at the time, they weren't really doing it any different to what a lot of people were doing. So it's not like they were doing it worse. It was just like, these tools that you could get were just so expensive, and it just wasn't freely available. So one of the first ideas we wanted to do then was actually automate the entire process of processing a bill. So when you receive your invoice, which some countries call it a bill, that invoice then goes through a whole rigmarole of a bunch of people passing it from one person to the next. Everybody, emailing it to each other, and it needs to go through approvals so that the right people are actually able to approve that payment.
The title of this podcast is Money Travels, and when we think about making a payment as a consumer, it's relatively binary. You're making a payment, it's done, it's out the door.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about B2B payments, as you're saying, like there's so much stuff that happens in the background that's not necessarily just the money moving.
Yeah.
That is part of that whole payment. And that's what you're saying. That's the problem that you identified. Just that admin that goes with just simply paying an invoice.
You look at how consumer apps work. They don't have to talk to each other. You don't have to have your app that you can book movies with to have to talk to your gym app. And they don't have to talk to your bank. Those things can live happily ever after in an isolated space. But in business, it just doesn't work that way. Everything is connected. And if things aren't connected, they are connected either by humans moving a piece of paper, or by humans talking, or by email. If you think of how long cloud has been around, and just think of accounting systems in the cloud, and we still have people having to download these payments and upload them into their bank, and having to, some people just manually go through them one by one. It's absolutely crazy. The biggest challenge you have in business is change, and how hard it is to change. And it's in a situation where the risk of change is also a lot higher because everything is connected. We always make a joke. You flick the switch in the hallway, and the garage door starts opening. And then if you flick the switch in the bathroom, all of a sudden the oven goes on. And that's how a lot of businesses are built these days. They've got historical tech stacks, and it's difficult to untie the spaghetti.
Yeah.
I think someone needs to look at the wiring in your house if that's what's happening. So why did an acquisition make sense anyway? How did that kind of partnership with OFX come about?
When we started the business, even when you start to pitch for investments, everybody you talk to kind of really wants you to kind of say the magic words and say, like, this is how we're going to go global. And so we looked at the US and thought, okay, that market's pretty sophisticated in this space. You've got some very strong legacy players that have been there a number of years. There's a lot of money. We're not at that stage yet. We just want to kind of like first conquer this side of the world. And we've got some fantastic investors on board, people especially from a couple of angel investors that helped us from California, some really good guys that we're just like, guys, just don't come here right now. It's very, very hot. There's a lot going on. Kind of the space has been going really hot for like 2-3 years already, but you're on the right track, and we really believe in, the stuff that you're doing. And start thinking about where do you want to go. So our first thoughts were kind of, we can do Australia, we do maybe Asia Pacific, but the Commonwealth countries of the world, we want to start to go after them. And when we were about 2-3 years in, we had OFX actually contact us independently. They very sneakily registered on our platform. They'd obviously done their homework, and they were in a state where they were thinking about, how do they start to modernize the company. Then had been in an incredible 25-year existence, and they were kind of starting to think, how do they, move to the next thing? There was some really good conversations, and I'm still to this day extremely glad that they called us and they said hello. We never set out to kind of be acquired. It wasn't part of our plan. Some really good advice on that one that somebody once gave me is like, if that's your plan, well, you don't really care about your customer. And so we just wanted to make our customers happy. And when OFX came along, we were at first quite resistant to it because we thought that was the enemy. That was the enemy that we were trying to beat. And what we thought about was, they are so perfectly aligned as to where we want to go. They were already operating in all these markets, and they had an existence there. And by that time, I'd become acutely aware of how hard it is to open an office. You know, it's easy to build tech. I say easy in inverted commas. All my engineers are going to roll their eyes now.
Yeah.
But it's easy to build the tech. It's easy to, you know, do all these other things. But to have an operating office in a country is a big deal. It's hard work. You know, it's a lot of information coming through from the floor and the ground. And they'd already done that. And so we had what they wanted and they had what we wanted. And we looked at it and go, are we aligned on roadmap? Are we aligned on, you know, how we care about our customers? They're obsessed by customers. And there was a relief, you know, that, you know, for us in particular, that we could take this tech now and go and, you know, start to roll it out to other countries.
That's interesting. It looks like there was a lot of benefit for Paytron to actually grow, probably rapidly expand the reach, go where you were not. What was the benefit for OFX? Where do you see the partnership? The bank with the fintech or the fintech with the banks?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think no matter which way I answer this one, people are going to have a disagreement, right? Which is why the debate is still raging. Looking back, it was the right decision because for us, you know, the amount of clients that OFX has on the platform is hard work to get. It's hard to sell a platform. It's very, very hard. And the amount of technology that OFX wanted to redo at the time, they looked at the space and go, look, this is going to take them years of having to redo things, and there's a lot of risk. They can acquire this really good technology and start actually providing this technology to their clients who were asking for improvements in certain areas. And so they weighed up all the opportunity cost and said, okay, this makes sense.
From your point of view, it's we can expand what we were doing and solve problems for another, you know, few thousand customers. And I guess from their point of view, it's actually what we're really good at is that FX piece, that payments piece. And it's a pretty good kind of meeting of minds there.
That's right, yeah. The way that we viewed where the space is going is we always thought, like, if we can start with the workflow and fix the workflow for the end client. I was like, there's an invoice that comes in, you need to make the payment, somebody needs to key it in, somebody needs to go and buy the FX or buy the payment and get it into the system and then do all the reconciliation in the accounting platform. That is an enormous industry in itself. And there's so much waste of time that goes in there and people just doing mind-numbing work. When we joined OFX, we were like, okay, this is good because now we have all these parties that understand FX very, very well. We can now start solving the actual software, the actual problem that the client has. And so become obsessed with the client's problem and let other experts sort out all the infrastructure and all the work in the background of moving the money.
We discussed that earlier.
Go on.
Yeah, you can. I can ask you a question. Right? Am I allowed now?
You're fine.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Open the door there.
You get one more. You get one more question.
One more. We talked about it when we prepped the podcast around your clients and the satisfaction of your clients, because with any acquisition there is always a risk. Like,
yeah.
who's good, and it's also for the employees. Who's going to stay? Who's going to leave? And I think you've got a fascinating story here because it went pretty well for you.
Mm-hmm. We had to deal with a couple of issues. One of our vendors actually just disappeared overnight. And so we had to deal with that. And the vendors went bust because it was during that really, really sticky time in the market where things got bad with funding collapses and all kinds of stuff. And so when we came over, our clients had shown enormous resiliency and stuck around on our platform. And that gave us confidence that they really liked the product and they were very happy with the product. They weren't happy because they'd gone through some pain, but they were willing to stay and give us a go. Those clients are still with us today. And I'm extremely happy. You know, there's one or two that's left. You know, it's not for them. It's not the platform that they wanted to do. 98% plus are still with us today.
If you don't mind me asking, is that what keeps you there and keeps you
it's a big
turning
reason.
Up every day?
Yeah, it's a big reason. Like the amount of resources that OFX brings is very different than being in a startup. You know, it's actually now you have, if I can say, enough resource that you can start to invest in clients to the extent that you've always dreamt of. You can't always do what you want, you know, because like there's always priorities and there's always a lot of things that you need to do first. But you know, now we can actually start to do that. So it's a big reason it keeps me there is to think that the job's only starting.
Yeah, we use the analogy that it's less an exit, but just a door to a bigger room.
Yeah,
filled with possibilities. It's great to see. We love speaking to all of our guests, but you know, founders who are truly customer obsessed and finding a home that is equally as customer obsessed to you're saying yourself, you were scratching the surface in terms of the possibilities of what Paytron could bring.
Mm-hmm.
Because this money travels, we're also super keen to learn and get your insights on what's happening here in this region.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are the big opportunities, but also the big challenges, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically Australia, or we can expand Asia Pacific overall.
Yeah.
The specificities here.
I think that the amount of small challenges that people don't always expect in this side of the world, they think of Australia either as spiders and snakes, or big sharks, or that's about it, right? But you get those versions in the entire financial industry as well. Like, there's a lot of spiders and snakes in Asia Pacific in finance, and we used to get a lot of entrants from other countries, people that are playing in the trading industry, and very, very, very good, sophisticated players that used to come here, very successful in the US, very successful in UK and Europe, and they got massively burnt in Asia Pacific. And the one thing that we started to study was like, why is that the case? And the reason is that people think it's a big homogeneous market here, and it's everything but, right? Like, you've got so many borders, so many different rules, so many different cultures and languages, which you have to deal with somewhere. But you have different currencies, you have regulators that don't even talk to each other in some cases, and even though they sometimes share like a common, we want to achieve this, they still have all the politics to deal with and everything else. And so one thing that I can say is that's great about actually starting here is that your mindset is from the beginning. You have to think about these problems, and you have to think about tax, or the different tax rates. That's the big thing that I've learned. I'm not saying that we always get it right. Don't misunderstand me there. But I'm saying is like, I think that's what people get wrong whenever they come here. And the nice thing about being in a smaller country is that you have to think global. It teaches you to worry about other currencies and other, languages and tax rates and things like that.
In this industry, everyone partners with each other because there is always a part of your offering that that is of interest of someone else, that is a traditional competitor
Correct.
of yours, and all of a sudden a big partner helping you expanding, or you help them expanding. That's a fascinating industry. I don't know if there are others like that, but it's almost unique.
Yeah, it is. And I've got a fantastic mentor, and one of our investors over there, he said to me once, like, I was very anti-competitors in the beginning. I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to share anything. I was very kind of closed loop. You can't get into the app without me kind of figuring out who you are and making sure it's not the competitors snooping. Now I know the execution is so difficult. You can get all my ideas. Like, there's nothing you're going to do. Like, executing is so difficult, right? The execution is the secret. It's not the idea. So he said to me at the time, make friends with all your competitors. Right? You guys are going to need each other. Somewhere you're going to have to work with them. And you want friends in this journey. You don't want enemies. And that was the best advice I got. Do your thing for your clients. Make sure you obsess about the clients. There's enough space for everybody to kind of play. So it's better to work together.
Yeah. Not having any enemies and actually only have friends in the industry. It's also a matter of building this ecosystem.
Yeah.
And with the ecosystem, solving the multiple problems that the same client will face.
I don't think everybody shares that view, though. We still do have a few competitors that are,
No, I'm sure, and you always have some. But
you do,
it's the power of the ecosystem is massively underestimated.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I had a burning question before Max took over. How much do the customers kind of understand of the challenges under the hood when it comes to moving money and it comes to kind of the spend management when you're looking across borders? So you're dealing with kind of Australian customers, but as international trade grows, they're going to have to pay invoices in different countries.
Yeah.
Do they understand that? Do you talk to them about that? And if they do understand it, I'm guessing they're looking for you guys to solve that challenge, right? Mm-hmm. How difficult is that?
You get two types of customers. Ones that are really, really surprised how difficult it is to do
Because it shouldn't be.
That
Right?
shouldn't
It's moving money.
Yeah.
And maybe it comes back to the consumerization of payments, and it's
Absolutely.
relatively easy to send money across borders.
Because as a consumer, like they have been trained very well. They can start to travel overseas and just go and they tap their card and everything works. But when it comes to business, it's not there yet. We're in the early phases of this industry, and so our clients arrive at us that are still surprised. They've burnt their fingers. They've tried using the existing infrastructure, whether it's through a bank or whatever, and just realized that this is incredibly difficult. And they've come up to all kinds of challenges about, now they need to hire more people in a department that doesn't make them more money, whether it's operations or finance or something. They are normally completely overwhelmed and feel just please help. And so, I've had one of our clients that we were pitching to at the time actually started crying on the call, just going, I can't believe I found you guys. This is going to save my entire company. And, that's quite you think that's nice because it's a compliment in a way, but then you realize that we need to get this thing out to more people.
Yeah.
We need to kind of help people. That's where my real kick comes from, is like when people are, having an emotional reaction because you're actually helping them.
It's a hell of a testimonial.
Yeah.
We can get that on the website.
It's yeah, I don't know if I can re-record that moment, but we have clients that when we have that product market fit that kicks in and the client realizes that this is the thing that they've been looking for, it's an emotional reaction. And then you get clients that have already gone through the pain. They aren't surprised. They know how difficult it is to do business overseas. They've opened up multiple offices. We've got a fantastic client that imports bikes, from all kinds of places in the world and exports them to other countries. They had businesses in the US and, they've got businesses in Australia, and they were very, very, very sure about what it is that they were looking for. And they pitched up and it was a few seconds. The whole sale was like, okay, yep, thanks. Can you show me that? Thanks. Yep, cool. All right, where do I sign up? And we were like not ready for that fast moment. So we were underprepared for how prepped the client was.
Yeah.
But that's the minority.
Yeah.
Clients actually tell you what problem it is that they want to solve, but they're not exactly sure how that problem looks. And so our job is to kind of ask the right question. And when we've asked the right question, it always kicks in. So the clients are, trying to search online. Some of them think they just want to make cross-border payment, but they're never quite satisfied with companies that are just doing cross-border payments. Like that industry has now evolved very far, and people are looking for more software, more services around that infrastructure. Because frankly, their banks have been doing it for years, all right? And whether they're using another fintech and I say this in apostrophes, like just to move the money, they're not happy with that anymore. They are starting to kind of say, this thing is supposed to do more for me. I need automation to kick in. Like the industry has had to evolve by now. Show me what you guys can do. And so those customers are awakening up, and we're seeing a lot more of that come through right now.
We're also making it complex because we try to make our product, for everyone, or make it as complete as possible from A to Z.
Yeah.
And then people feel like, but I don't need all of this.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you're inside our company at the moment. I think everybody's struggling with this right now because you look at where a lot of consumer apps are going. People are trying to do the everything app everywhere, right? But the problem becomes, and when you are offering everything, how do you talk? Who do you talk to? Are you somebody's doctor, or are you going to help them become more fit, or are you going to help them to find a movie, right? Or in business, are you going to move money internationally and locally? The answer is not an easy one. I think the way to address it is to actually attack the problem that you are trying to solve and talk about that problem and have unique entry points into your app and have the app. Our view is let the customer choose the complexity that they want, right? So when they come into the app, do they want the full freight? Do they want everything? Or do they want just to solve one thing? And so whether they just want to move money from A to B, or whether they want to issue a card to an employee or control spend or do approvals, they can do all of that on our app. Or they can choose to have a very vanilla experience and just send their transfer as easy as possible from Australia to the US and back.
I like to ask this question, like, what's still left to fix for customers when it comes to moving money?
Yeah, I love that question. I can't believe I'm still saying this, but it really is true. We're at the very start of clients starting to demand or expect or look for more from their apps in business. They don't want to have multiple ways to log in. They want to have all their entities with an overview in one place. And people want to see their cash flow actually in one place. Whether it's cards, whether it's payments, whether it's the approvals, who approved that, whether it's the invoices attached to it, they want to see these things in one place. So that to me is just starting. But where the industry is going is a completely interesting space. I think if you are just selling a transaction, that's it. That's just the thing that you're selling is a transaction. Your customers and clients have no reason to actually come back to you. The clients are looking for an experience. They don't care about the transaction. It's a utility. And so they are looking for a reason. So what are you giving them? What
value are you delivering?
What value are you delivering?
Yeah.
And because they can find it anyway. They can find it, and like who wants to compete about slicing a better cheddar, right? So I think that's where the industry is going. It's like you're going to move away from pure transactions, people that only offer transactions. We're going to move away from pure SaaS. SaaS and transactions have to combine. I don't want to, everybody's talking about AI. I'm really bored about it already, but I think what people are not talking about is the disruption that AI is bringing, the fact that you can just spin up an app by just actually typing in a prompt. Some of our listeners now, they think that is not real. Like in 6 to 12 months, you will not recognize what you can do by just starting to prompt into the AI. And so like a lot of these things are going to be so much change. I think that's what the world's not ready for.
The good thing is, because this is recorded, we can bookmark your thoughts.
Oh no!
And come back to it in a couple of years and say, okay, was he a genius, or did he really not know what he was talking about?
He did not know what he was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
We like to ask our guests, who are the 2 people you would love to see in this podcast? That could share their amazing story, their vision as well. Who are these 2 people, if you had 2 to nominate?
People at the moment that I'm following the closest is actually a lot of things that are coming out of YC Combinator, Paul Graham's group, and like I think if you can get Paul Graham on, I'd love to hear what he has to say. He is just an extraordinary person. Built some incredible products out of that house. People that I admire there is actually people that are currently building networks in general. I don't have a specific person. I follow quite a few of them. And how do you get to something like the size of like a Build.com? Rene, who's the CEO over there, he would be quite an interesting chap to kind of hear from, because Rene has got some kind of like network going at the moment, and I think I admire that. I think they've done really well.
I think it's a wrap.
I think that's a wrap.
Jaco, thank you again.
Thanks, Max.
If you like the episode today and you want to keep the conversation going, please follow us on social media. And of course, follow the show on YouTube and Spotify. And you can click on the subscribe button, the little bell, to get the next episode in your feed.
And if you like what you heard, then give us a review. Hopefully a good one. So we'll be back on next episode to explore more life-changing innovations in digital finance. So wherever your travels take you this week, remember to join us then for the next installment of Money Travels.
Hey guys.
Hey.
It's good to see you.
Not stage at all.